wait a few minutes. We're waiting for one more board member to have an in-person forum, so just bear with us.
Good, thank you.
Okay, we have a in-person forum, so I think I'll start with introductions. And Blair, if you'd go ahead and introduce yourself, we'll go around the table and around the room, please.
Blair Littlejohn from the General Counsel's Office.
Frank Barbieri, School Board.
James Campbell, Seminole Ridge High School.
Leandre Camel, City of South Bay.
Dave Talley, Audit Committee.
Teresa Michael, Inspector General.
Harry Hyde, Counsel for Inspector General.
Michael Dixon, Audit Committee.
Mark Bymaster, Audit Committee.
Nancy Samuels, Accounting.
Heather Frederick, Chief Financial Officer.
Brett Friedman, Partner with RSM.
Chantel Knowles, Manager with RSM.
Okay, let's go back here and have everyone introduce themselves too, please. Okay.
Wanda Paul, Chief Operating Officer.
Wanda, nice to see you.
Carla Acevedo, Inspector General. Susie Kay with the IG's office. Barbara Reynolds with the IG's office. Randy Logan, IG's office. Edith Smith, IG's office.
Okay, now the other side of the room, please.
Darcy Garbasy, Director of Purchasing.
Janelle McMahon, General Manager Purchasing.
Justin Jackson, Purchasing Agent.
And I don't need to read that, do I? Okay, we'll start with the approval of the agenda. I want to make an amendment to the agenda before it's approved, and I want to amend it to delete item 5.4, audit of district's background screening procedures for employees, vendors, and school volunteers. That's because the HR director couldn't be here. So with that amendment for the agenda, I would ask for approval of the amended agenda.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Next, take a few minutes to review the minutes. It seems like at least a year, but it's only been since April. Take a minute to review those, and after you've had a chance to review it, I'd accept a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, offer a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Leander. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Before we go any further, something that I just want to point out that's really of interest. We have two birthdays in this room coming up the same day on Sunday. Our Inspector General and her assistant Joyce. Both of them have birthdays on the 22nd of this month, so I ask you all to wish each one of them a healthy and happy birthday and many more. So congratulations. What a coincidence. The same department, the same day, everything. Miracles never cease.
Joyce is a lot older. We'll just point that out.
Okay. Public comments?
Yep, Chair Talley, this is Vice Chair McDonald. I've been waiting in the waiting room to try to get in since before 9. I just called in. I don't know if someone can let me in, the Google Meet meeting.
Who is that? Hold on just a minute.
Go ahead and check, and you should be able to come in now. Joyce is letting you in.
Okay, do we have any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move up on to the Inspector General update. Terry?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming here today on a Friday. I know it's been a long time. I apologize. We do have quite a bit on the agenda, but we'll try to get things through as quickly as possible. First, I would like to discuss the risk assessment. The risk assessment has been an ongoing project. I have interviewed or put out the invitation to interview all of executive management. I've also reached out to all of the committee, the citizens committee groups. I've also spoke to executive management, each one of the board members. I've spoken to CTA, PAL representative, principal representatives, and again, executive leadership. And from them, those three main groups, some of the issues that they have brought forward that they'd like us to look at is oversight of charter schools, HR operations, CARES funding, school-level purchases, lack of adequate governance policies, discipline as far as not being uniformly or consistently instituted, as well as the Baker acting and staff turnover levels. So those are different areas in which we will be concentrating with our work plan. And of course, as different emerging issues come up, we'll adjust as needed. We are in the process of advertising 2 auditors. One auditor will be specializing in federal grants for all the CARES and ESSER funds that we'll be receiving. I want to make sure that we're proactive on those to make sure that those funds are being spent and we're following all of the guidelines that are set forth by Washington so that we don't end up later on trying to adjust something. And this is a function and a request from the superintendent's office. And they've graciously given us the funding so that we can have that grant funding auditor. We also have one other where our annual report will be posted on the website today. At our next meeting, we'll actually give you a printed copy. We just finished it last night. So it will be posted today on the website. It's a little bit different than the previous years. Hopefully, it will cover a lot of the questions, a lot of concerns that people have as to the function of the IG's office and what we actually do. But that will be on our website today. And that is my update. Is there any questions for me?
Any questions or comments of any of the members? Leandra?
Mr. Chair, through the chair, is the school board working on the proposed allocations for those ARP funds? Are they putting something together in advance of receiving those funds?
I can answer that question. Yes, so we are required by the Florida Department of Education to prepare an application so that they can approve the use of those funds. So we're working on that process right now with the ESSER 2 funds. We're still awaiting guidance from Florida Department of Education on the application for the ARP funds, also known as ESSER 3.
All right, thank you. So, Ms. Michael, will that auditor be in place in time? Are you trying to get someone in place in time so they can work along with the allocation and?
Yes, most definitely. That is a high priority. We do have staff currently that we will have them assist until that time, but that one person, that will be their main function, is to work at that. But in the meantime, we have audit staff that are amazing that will be able to help and assist and monitor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? I notice we have two of the committee members that have joined us virtually. I note that there is a quorum of this committee physically present, and there are members that are appearing virtually. The opinion of the District Office of Attorney Office of General Counsel is that the existence of the COVID-19 pandemic would constitute an extraordinary circumstance The reason for the OGC's opinion is there has not been a pandemic in this country of this magnitude in over 100 years. A public health emergency has been determined that the virus has been contacted by millions of people and has returned in hundreds of thousands of deaths. However, it's a decision of the members of the committee physically present, using their good judgment, if this is an extraordinary circumstance, to allow members appearing virtually to participate and vote during the meeting. The decisions must be consistent and non-discriminatory. So I will ask both Kathy and Tammy, is the reason that you are not here personally due to the pandemic?
No. The reason that I am not here is that I recently just had surgery and I've been ordered to be at home convalescing by my doctor.
Okay. But Kathy? Yes, okay. Then I need to ask the committee for a motion and a second to find extraordinary circumstance to allow Kathy to vote at this meeting, and it's not necessary to do with our vice chair. So is there a motion to accept Kathy as to be able to vote at the meetings?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, thank you. We'll get back to the agenda.
A point of clarification, please, Chair. Does that mean that I cannot vote because I'm not there?
No, it means you can vote.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
That's why we went through this routine.
I just wanted to clarify that I
I
understood.
understand.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the audit reports 5.1. Who's going to cover that?
Ellen Steinhoff is our auditor.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all again in a while. The OIG reviewed the student transportation full-time equivalent survey procedures in response to a referral from the school police department. Each year, the FDOE requires that the district conducts student transportation FTE surveys. And the surveys count the FTE students who are transported to district and charter schools. In fiscal year 2020, the district received $28.4 million for student transportation funds through the Florida Education Finance Program, or FEFP. And FTE is also known as full-time equivalent, which is a common word you've heard a lot, FTE. In the fall of 2020, the Transportation Department notified that FTE survey forms were missing from the February 2020 survey. They notified school police, who investigated, but they did not find that a crime had occurred. The missing FTE survey forms were for 14 buses and contained ridership information for 1,680 students, or about $409 for each FTE student transported. The district could lose an estimated $344,000 in transportation FEFP funds due to the missing FTE survey forms. We reviewed procedures for documenting student ridership during the transportation FTE surveys. This special review had two major conclusions. The first conclusion was that transportation has implemented new procedures in response to the lost FTE survey forms. Transportation developed new procedures which include centralized storage and scanning of the survey forms, and also automating the FTE survey process with student badges. And we have two recommendations for the new procedures. One new procedure implemented is that the survey forms are transferred from the bus compounds where they originate to the east compound for centralized storage and scanning. However, there is no routing sign-off to track the location of these forms. And we recommended that transportation create a routing sign-off sheet to track the transfers of all survey forms between the compounds. The routing sign-off sheet should be signed and dated by the responsible coordinators. Another recommendation was that the new procedures needed to be formalized in a written procedures manual for staff. Formal written documentation should provide guidance on all the forms, files, and practices used in the transportation FTE survey process to ensure that all the steps are properly completed. The formal procedures should also include the process to count student ridership and the data compilation for the FTE surveys. Management concurred, and their target date for completion is December 31st. The second comment was that an automatic comparison of the electronic FTE files was needed. After the bus drivers complete the survey forms, the bus compound coordinators manually enter the student ridership information from the forms into the transportation routing and survey system. The electronic files from the transportation routing and survey system are then sent to the FDOE, but the student enrollment information is not validated beforehand. This process can result in transportation receiving multiple rounds of FDOE error reports that staff then corrects and resubmits the file to the FDOE. However, there is only one transportation employee who reviewed the data files manually for errors before the file was submitted or resubmitted to the FDOE, and these large files can exceed 10,000 records. We recommended that transportation and IT collaborate and develop an automated comparison of student ridership data with student enrollment data prior to sending the transportation FTE survey files to the FDOE. Then, exceptions could be corrected before the first file submission, reducing the need for multiple manual reviews. Also, all developed procedures should be documented in writing for future staff reference, and this will hopefully increase efficiency, improve reporting accuracy, and make better use of the district's limited resources. Management concurred, and they will work with IT and make better use of their resources by December 31st, 2021, by implementing our recommendations. Finally, one of the new procedures we recommended that needed documenting is the new automation of collecting and recording student ridership information into the transportation routing and survey system. The new method was tested at one pilot school at the time of our review, where students scan their student ID cards with a badge reader when boarding a school bus. The scanned information was uploaded into the transportation routing and survey system. This eliminated the need for bus drivers to manually check attendance on the survey forms and coordinators to manually input the ridership information into the transportation routing and survey system. On February 17, 2021, the school board approved the purchase of additional badge readers for all school buses. And transportation can provide any updates, and I would like to add that transportation was diligent in making sure that the FTE survey process was accurate and that the process was improved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Comments of the committee members?
I just have one question, if I may. The 14 buses, could you explain the 14 buses and the lost information? Because I understand it was lost, but did anybody pursue how it got lost? I don't think it's in the report.
Perhaps Shane would like to respond?
Yes, I could. Yes, absolutely. What happened? Exactly what happened is we bring the surveys in for folks to do the manual updates as mentioned previously. And one individual was working on those surveys just prior to COVID. Once COVID, we were sent home from the district during that period. The files were supposed to be left on the desk of that person. When we returned to the facilities to start working again in August, different folks came in at different times, and we were also doing separation of making sure everybody was 6 feet apart and files were moved around, desks were moved around. And we figured it's during that process that the files went missing. We could not conclusively say how or why, so we asked school police to come in and take a look just to make sure that there was nothing inappropriate done. They did their investigation, did not find that, and we then proceeded to tighten the processes as much as we could.
Okay, that's a great answer. Another question, I want to follow up on that, if I may, real fast. I don't want to take too much time. I thought this came from the police first. Isn't that right?
It was referred to us by school police, and
Right. Okay,
they did
so
not
that's-
find any criminal.
Oh, just for the criminal side of it?
Right, and
Okay, I
the
understand.
data was entered into the transportation system. That's
Got it.
how we know
Got it.
the
Okay,
number
thank
of
you.
students.
That's
We
Just the
actually-
forms.
If I may, we actually asked police, school police to come in and look at that situation. At the time, we also had people that we lost through budget cuts and so forth.
Okay.
So we actually referred it to school police.
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you.
Any further questions?
One question
Roger.
to, Mr. Chair, through the chair, to Ms. Paul. In regards to your response, do you need to build in some additional time, targeted completion date, in light of where we are with the Delta variant? And should anything happen, does additional time need to be built into meeting that targeted date of December 31st?
We'll take it if we can get it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this report.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
And Mr.
I
Chair,
move to accept it.
if I could make a modification to that, adding an additional 3 months to the targeted date, if necessary.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion with that adjustment to it. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the report as provided with additional 30 days, on the additional 3 months on the targeted completion date.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Okay, item 5.2, Auditor School Impact Fee Collections.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Carla Acevedo, and I completed the audit of impact fees collected by Palm Beach County for the period of June 2019 to February 2020. Just as a quick background, school impact fees are assessed and collected to to pay for roads, parks, schools, and other infrastructure needs each time a building permit is issued. The school impact fees are collected by the county and remitted to the school district upon request, and may only be used for new school constructions or addition of student station and to existing facilities. Our audit included 3 observations. Number 1 is that school impact fees collected by Palm Beach County were accurately assessed for the period review. Number 2, administrative fees, currently at 3.4% of all the fees collected, were also assessed accurately by the county. As a background, the admin fees are programmed into the system to calculate 3.4%. So our review was limited because it's a system control, and we found no discrepancies on that. As part of this observation number 2, we noted that our observation is that admin fees may need to be reviewed, and this is to the fact that, as you have read in the report, impact fees were increased significantly during the past 2 years, and having a 3.4% automatically calculated will significantly increase that admin fee that's deducted from the amount received by the district. And we consider that the increase in impact fees should have a minimal impact on the collection process, and we are suggesting that this current practice be reviewed, because the administrative fees should not exceed the cost associated with collecting the fees. And number 3, procedures need to be codified, and by that we mean they need to be documented to ensure continuity, since there is only one employee who knows the process to handle this request. We also noted that the last request for funds was submitted in June 2019, and as of March 2021, the available fund to draw was $36 million, and it had not been requested. Pretty much, do you have any guys?
Excuse me, what did you conclude, the $38 million, what did you say after that?
Yeah, the available balance of impact fees available to the school district for request was $36 million as of March 2021, but it hasn't been requested as of that date.
It has been requested?
Has not been requested.
Why is that?
Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Leanne Evans, I'm the district treasurer, and I wanted to provide an update. The funds have been requested, and we're working with the county. We're expecting to have it. It was accrued for FY21, and we're expecting the money will be here this week or next week.
Okay.
So, and the other thing I wanted to mention, if you don't mind, on item number 2 regarding the fees for impact fees, there was a recent change in statute that requires those fees to be based on actual fees incurred. So this issue will be going away, and I'm working with county staff to update that as well as our procedures and how we collect impact fees. The change in statute will change everything in how we collect the fees. So we're working with the director of OFMB. Virginia Baker's actually asked to attend that meeting because her background is in impact fees. So she's a little busy with COVID right now. So I'm not sure that meeting's going to happen right away, but we have requested all the funds and expect to receive them next week. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Carla, thank you. Are there any questions of Carla or any comments on this report?
I have a quick question. For the admin fees, are they going to do a direct or indirect cost study every year to make sure that they're not going over the admin fee cost?
Well, our suggestion is that they review, that they work together to review the process. Right now, it's set up by the system, so it automatically calculates the percentage. So I'm not sure exactly what,
Well, it automatically calculates the percentage, but the percentage can't go over what your actual costs are.
Correct, yeah.
So it's a little vague on what is going to be done to make sure it doesn't go over that cost.
Okay, and that procedure will be set by Palm Beach County, and that's something that we'll talk about when we meet with them.
Okay.
They have to set the procedure, not us, but we'll make sure that they're in compliance.
Okay.
Okay, any further comments? Questions? Again, thank you very much. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.2.
I make a motion that we approve item 5.2 on the agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, item 5.3.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Barbara Reynolds, and I'm here to present the report for the audit of controls for updating student grades in Student Information System called SIS. And just to give a short background, the SIS was implemented in 2017-18 school year, and it replaced the term system that we had. And the SIS system is used for maintaining student information such as attendance, course grades, reports cards, and transcript. Okay, this audit of controls for updating student grade had two main objectives. The first one was to assess whether the controls and procedures for updating and protecting the integrity of student grades and related information in the SIS system are adequate, and also to determine the extent of compliance with applicable school board policies. Okay, this audit had produced two major conclusions. For number one, the first conclusion, is that the lockout system is working adequately. We tested the lockout system control feature for 3 grading quarters during the audit period and found that it was working as designed. Management agrees with our conclusion. Under 1B, this has to do with the access to SIS system. Employees' access to SIS system granted prior to completing required training. In order to access SIS, all users are required to complete online training before being granted access to the system. We tested 75 user accounts and found that 5 of the 75 were granted access to SIS prior to their completion of the required online training. Delays for this range from 1 to 6 to 7 days. Management states that they're currently working on and reviewing the process, but also they state that access to SIS portal tile is activated only after SIS training is completed. Conclusion 1C. Separated employees' access to SIS not removed timely. We compared SIS active user list as of April 12, 2021 to the list of separated employees as of April 2nd, 2021. This comparison revealed that SIS user IDs for 20 former employees that ended employment between October 2017 and June 2020 had not been disabled and removed from the SIS. I must also note that we review grade change reports for 2 sample periods between July 1, 2018 and January 2021, and we did not find that any student grade changes were made by any of those separated employees. Management responded to this, and they stated that the network user ID the network ID is immediately disabled in the Active Directory. However, they have implemented a process effective May 1, 2021 to end date SIS permissions in a timely manner. Okay, our conclusion 1D, annual IT application security audit ineffective. And let me just explain briefly. Each year, the IT department requests principals and department heads to review a list of active SIS users and confirm the appropriateness of each user's access based on their current job responsibilities and titles. The fiscal year 2020 IT security audit was based on information available as of November 1, 2019, and the confirmation was completed on January 30th, 2020. Our examination revealed that 5 employees who were separated prior to November 1, 2019 still had active SIS user accounts as of April 12, 2021. So therefore, it appears that the FY 2020 security audit performed by the IT department was not effective in identifying and removing access for separated employees. Okay, management responded that the review process completed by the department supervisor is completed by the school or department supervisor, and they are currently reviewing the process to ensure that any changes identified during the annual review are updated in a timely manner. Conclusion number 2. 12 or 22% of 54 sample grade changes were made without principal's approval. OIG obtained grade change reports for the first semester of FY21 and noted that 7 schools had 10 or more grade changes. So we selected a sample of 54 grade changes from those 7 schools for detailed testing. The review found that 12 or 22% of the sample grade changes were processed manually, and they neither included the authorization signature of the teachers or the principal, nor used the grade change report documentation form that are required to support these grade changes. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Barbara. Comments of the committee members?
I have a question.
Yes, Michael.
Why doesn't the system provide a principal sign-off before the grade can be changed? Because it's pretty significant, 22% of your sample. That's pretty high. Why wouldn't the system just do that? Just the IT people just create that? That's an easy fix, I would think.
I agree. It's the grade shouldn't be able to be changed without the right approval in the system. And plus, it's saying that it's done manually, but someone had to go into the system to change the grade. So who's the person that changed the grade?
Okay, maybe I'll defer to someone in the who has more experience with SIS system to explain that.
And I mean, I will have to come back, or actually maybe I could ask Mr. Campbell, who's actually gone through the process of the grade changes to explain how it works.
The SIS system holds all of our grades that our teachers are responsible for, as long as they're still employed by the district. Some of the grade changes end up being teachers who are no longer on site, no longer with the district. If it's a previous school year, some things occur where they can make a change and they have to be initiated through our process, and they only are input by the data processor because the person who initially put those grades in the system are not available. I know in some other cases, frankly, our case was on there, it was the grades that we had to get changed were dual enrollment courses. So our teacher, we do not have a teacher who even touches those grades. They're generated by the college. The college sent us grade change forms, and they went to our data processor who made the change based on the email that they had received from the college.
Did you sign off on it?
No, it never came to me because our counselors were of the belief that these are grades that aren't our school grades. They were from the college, so we were just taking their records and updating our records. We've since said it doesn't matter. If there's a grade change, it's got to go in the appropriate grade change form, but they still wouldn't be done in SIS by anybody other than the data processor because they're the only ones who can access those particular grades. But we'll go through from this point forward, putting the grade change request on the appropriate documentation that comes to me first for a signature, and then we'll go to our regional or instructional superintendent because it's not involving a teacher on our campus. Once they approve it, then our data processor will receive it to make the change.
I find that that's a huge flaw in the controls that a data processor can change a grade without anyone checking that whatsoever. That's probably that's the biggest flaw you probably have in the control system. I mean, that probably needs to change.
Well, we can look into whether there's an option to add a separate level of approval, but also bring back to the committee, the reason why it was set up the way it was. And I wish I had that information now, but I will bring it back to the committee.
At this point, most of the grade changes that all the grade changes from teachers who are still in the system go through and I have to approve them. It's only these ones that are not teachers who are still on campus or attached to the school that go through this other paperwork process.
I think that,
And I could see that changing as well. I mean, it's,
I think that's even a worse situation when you have a teacher that's not involved now to be able to do that versus a teacher that's on board right now. That's even further out there in the risk curve.
But when, excuse me, when you have a teacher who leaves, who's left for whatever reason, and then you have children who make up work afterwards due to illness or whatever, you have to give the children the benefit of getting those grades.
Okay.
So back in the day, my assistant principal or the guidance counselor would initiate the change. We'd have a teacher who taught the same subject area, grade it. They do the change and then I'd sign it. So you have some situations that are almost impossible just to the fact that you've lost personnel and you've got to err on the side of the child.
Yeah, but this isn't saying that the child shouldn't have a grade change. It's just a process of controls on the way the grade is being changed.
Right.
Right. But again, when you're talking about the teacher's gone, you can't make it so cumbersome and so impossible that it doesn't get done. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but this, I feel like it's not cumbersome enough to where you have a single data processor. I mean, imagine if a hacker can get the login of that data processor and unilaterally change every single grade in the system if they
Certainly,
want to.
but we've heard about it. But the system is such that that's the job of the data processor. And if you can't trust the data processor, it's like a bookkeeper. You can't trust the bookkeeper, then you've got an issue.
We have an issue. We do have an issue.
Well, I just want to just also add, to add some context to it, the data processor is entering all the information for that student. So what I'd have to see whether it's possible to just separate out the grade changes as to whether that could have a separate level of approval, because having the principal approve every single change that the data processor enters is not possible, because it's everything related to the student. So that's where I have to go back to see whether it's possible to, like I said, just break out the grade changes.
Just add on
And
the
I'm
grade.
thinking that that's probably where the difficulty is, but that doesn't mean that we're not willing to work with our vendor to try to make that a possibility. So I will make sure to bring that back to the committee.
I have a comment. I know that the scope of the audit had to do with controls, but I couldn't help but see that half of almost 50% of the changes were made at one school, Royal Palm School. I think it was 282 of the 594 or 574. So my question is there, when you come into a situation like this, even though it's outside, it may be outside of the scope of the audit, what is the procedure, if any, to instruct the appropriate department or at the school district that there may be an issue or maybe it should be looked at further? Because that's a lot of grade changes from one school.
I know that Mr. Tierney, the Deputy Superintendent, Chief of Schools, spoke with each of the principals that were identified within the report, and not just those principals, but also the principal supervisors, to reinforce again the need to follow the protocols of the district. And I know he'll continue to monitor that because of the importance of ensuring that we follow the district controls that are in place.
Okay, are there any further questions? Leandre?
Yes, sir. Clearinghouse, when you say separation, I apologize, when you say separation, are you meaning separation from the school to another school, or separation with the district altogether? If a teacher is no longer, or an employee is no longer with that school site or with the district, should we have a clearinghouse through IT with prior to the separation, that we do a checklist? Let me just give a scenario. When I'm terminating an employee, there is and I just have to be real clear, when I'm terminating an employee, IT is a part of that pre-termination meeting. So we are ending their access prior to separation. So if we're having a 4 o'clock meeting, IT know to shut them off at 3:59, and then they're coming in at 4 p.m. to meet with the manager for separation. Are we doing that? Because if the teachers still have access, or that employee still have access to the system, that's another flaw outside of the data processor. So I'm just asking for some clarity.
Can I ask this or answer what I know? As a former employee, once we're disabled or they say you're no longer, we're separating you, immediately your access is denied from the system. Right?
Yeah, we have, there's a systematic process in place that once the employee termination date is entered in the system, it's automatically that night, there's a batch that's run so that their termination is effective on all systems. And I think, Mr. Usler, if you wanted to add anything to that?
Right, that is correct. Heather, my name is Ray Usler. I'm the Director of IT Security. So yeah, that termination happens that night. Their network, once they're terminated, their Active Directory, in fact, then terminates and goes through and kills all the access to these systems.
I'm a little confused. On the table 2 and 1, the reports go as of April 12th, 2021. And the example of employment dates are all these dates that are security related, I guess, that weren't taken off as of, I guess, August 12th, 2021. How do they immediately get taken off?
Well, some part of the problem is they could have been rehired. So if they were terminated and then rehired, so that's timing could be an issue. They could have gone from one school to another, possibly, and said, hey, I need my permissions for another month. So there could be a lot of different timing issues that are involved.
Isn't that the question you just asked? How you define separation?
Yes, that is the question.
Yeah. So I think this is an IT issue, big time. It's not financial, it's IT.
I understand we've had a couple of issues that we've identified as far as when employees leave and access is terminated, both with the gate card as well as fingerprints. And that was part of the one audit that we had removed. So there is an issue that we are looking at regarding exit process. I think some of your questions will probably be answered at the next audit committee when we review the HR background screening.
Okay, thank you.
But Mr. Chair, could we accept this report as prepared and bring it back when we have HR at this following audit, at the next audit committee meeting?
Say yes. So is there further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept this report as presented.
Mr. Chair, I accept the report as presented and request that it comes back on the agenda when HR and IT could be present.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to item 6.1, the proposed annual work plan. Inspector General Michael. Or Randy.
I'm going to make Randy do some work.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. This is the proposed work plan for this current year. And then, like Ms. Michael said, that we're based on some risk assessment throughout the school district, and also her meeting with a lot of cabinet staff members and management teams. And also we look at our prior audits, when did we do what and so forth. And then we came up with this plan. And let me go through some of it, most of these items now, we did have some audits performed before, but they are way years ago. Like for the first one is the cybersecurity audit. We did a part 1 overall general review of this back in 2018 and 19. And now I think it's time to continue to do a more in-depth review into the actual process of how we implement our cybersecurity procedures. The second item is about the disaster recovery plan. It is so important that in Florida, because of the potential hurricane hit, we might encounter a lot of potential issues with the disruption to the IT operations. And then the last time we looked at it was back in 2014. So it's again time to look at it again to see any progress or any improvement in the plan. The third one is about the non-construction major purchases. We have a separate teams look into the construction purchases. This is looking at other non-construction related purchases. So to see the actual compliance with the contracts and the deliverable and so on and so forth. And then this of only look at the selected purchases, not all the purchases. It's all those that have like a high dollar value contracts. The fourth item is the P-card expenditures. In our annual internal funds audit at the schools, P-card purchases made by schools are part of the internal funds audits. And this project we proposed is to look into the P-card purchases made by departments, not by schools. So that will cover the whole P-card purchases. So school part is handled during the school audit, and this one is looking at the district-wide, district-level departments. The fifth item is about the school bus safety devices review. We looked at the school bus safety devices back in 2017 and 2019, and then we found a lot of issues with the safety devices. Either at the time in the first audit, we found that some employees intentionally disabled certain safety devices, and then they corrected them. But back in 2019, we did a follow-up. There were quite a significant percentage of the sample buses had defective devices. So this time we want to see how our transportation departments monitor the safety devices and any improvement in this area too. Because the safety devices are really concerns about the protection of the children, that type of things. And then the others are our regular continuous monitoring of the internal funds, like the sixth item is based on the risk and also what we found during the school audit. We will select certain schools to do the cash count to make sure all cash collected at schools are properly accounted for. And number 7 is kind of a support for all other audit functions as a continuous data analytics type things to download a lot of information from various computer systems to identify any potential trend or irregularity so that we can do more in-depth review in those areas. Number 8 is the district-wide risk assessment. A few years ago, the state passed a law that requires all school boards who have $500 million in or above in budget needs to do district level risk assessments once every 5 years. So this one we are in the process of doing it. And number 9 is to do any special requests from principals or senior staff members, and also any emerging issues we identified during our various audits during the year. Is there any questions on this plan? And of course, I'm sorry, of course, one the IC is about the project in progress from prior years. So for the first 3 items, it's already completed. Like you see, item number 1 is just presented. Item number 2 also just presented. Number 3 is we just tabled it for next audit committee meeting. And then the rest, item number 4, we already sent out the preliminary draft reports to management for review and for management response too. The other 4, we are still in a few stage. Any questions?
Chairman Barberi?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Question for Randy. when you talk about schools, the bus safety devices, maybe I just didn't hear you say it, but are we talking about the device on the back of the bus that the bus driver has to check?
The device at the back is one of the things to make sure that the bus driver will walk all the way through to the end to make sure there's no students left in the bus after they, drop off all the
Right, so
students.
did you find some of those devices were not working
In the past, yes. In the past, yes.
recently? Because my understanding is that's been corrected. So that-
Yes, that's why we want to do another follow-up to make sure there was no more such a case in there.
Okay, so you said you did that follow-up and there were
Yes,
no
like
malfunction?
if you look at page 4, you can see item number 5. In 2016, the audit found 46% of the devices were not working. In then 2019, our follow-up found 15% were not working. Because of 15% is quite substantial. That's why we want to do a quick follow-up again this year to see how the transportation departments maintain and also to review and also to examine all the devices on a monthly basis.
And I know they're supposed to be unannounced, but when do you plan starting those unannounced checks?
We need to look at our schedule too, to see when we start to doing it. And then, of course, we don't want to interfere with the day-to-day operations. So we'll make sure that we will work, in a way that will have minimum interruptions to the day-to-day operations.
All right, well, I'm not so much concerned with minimal disruptions. I'm more concerned with that's a potential for a child dying, so.
Yeah, okay.
That,
We
those
will
those
try to
devices have to be working, especially when it's 95 degrees outside. So I'm concerned that we don't know at this moment whether all of those devices are working on our buses and we're transporting children in 95-degree weather. So somebody needs to make sure that those devices are working, so that your audit needs to be done as soon as possible to make sure that those
We
devices.
will go back to make the schedule as soon as possible to see, when to start this, and then we will visit multiple sites too, not just one site, because we have 5 compounds. We'll
Right, and I'll
visit
speak with
multiple
the
sites.
superintendent about getting transfer, I guess, Mr. Shane is, Shane.
Shane Shedwell.
He's on, Searchwell's on the line, so I'm asking, I'll clear it through the superintendent, but I want those buses checked immediately to make sure every one of those devices is functioning before we put another child on a bus.
Sure.
We will definitely make sure that any safety and security, and also why, as we're doing any audit or investigation, if there is a emergent issue having to do with safety or security, we automatically make contact. We don't wait for the report to come out, and we can move that up to the top.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Is there a district-wide cashless plan in place that so many schools have to be cashless in a certain time period?
Our goal is for the schools to be cashless, although it's not possible to completely eliminate cash. So we're doing everything we can to minimize the amount of cash at the school sites. And that's what our process is. And we have a credit card, we accept credit cards for certain fees. And with school food service, breakfast and lunch is now free. So that minimizes a lot of the cash related to food service, but we still have a la carte services. But we are doing everything we can to minimize the cash with the goal of potentially one day going cashless, although that will be difficult.
Is there a possibility we can include that into the work plan, not to go 100% cashless, but we could work, that can be a part of the IG's work plan? 50%, not so much cashless, but it could just be a part of the work plan, encouraging and working with the school sites to be as cashless as possible. But we can minimize some of these unaccounted for cash that we've seen in the previous year as well.
Most definitely. When the internal funds, when they're doing the audits on all of the internal funds, they look at all those issues, and the cash as part of that, as well as unannounced. So they look at that, P cards, there's quite a bit that they do when they go out to do those at every school every year.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment back on the work plan for a minute? When I read these two audit reports, 5.3 and 5.4, which I see them, there was some cash involved in, I think, one of them with a reimbursement, but I saw these as operational audits. And I was very confused with all the different systems that are being used in each of the reports. So it led me to start thinking, I really think that we should focus our work plan a little bit more on IT here, because there's a lot of systems out there, and I don't know if they're talking to each other the way they should be. And both 5.3 and 5.4 report, although we tabled 5.4, I'm going to comment on it, that had serious IT issues that weren't being addressed, which caused, I think, in today's world, a lot of complexity. So in this, I don't know how much in this work plan of the way you have it by percentage, I would like to see a percentage. If you could identify where that's going to happen in this work plan, I'd like to know right now. If you could help me understand that, because we have to start thinking about this.
Okay.
Operational audits versus financial audits. It's getting very, I mean, I read two reports and I'm thinking, oh my God, how many systems are here? 10? And that's just two topics. I mean, you can't run a business that way, I know that, and it certainly could maybe enhance the performance of the school district if we start addressing that as a committee, to add efficiency in operations, both on the operational side and the financial side. Just to comment. So my question is, in this work plan, where, if any, have you focused specifically on what I'm asking to maybe be added? Is there anything in here for that kind of a review?
Okay. Now, what we can do, we know that we have a very diverse IT systems within the districts, and then because each function, the IT requirements are very special and specific to the individual department's operations. Like, for instance, we can see for the items 5.4 and item 5.3. 5.3 is more on the academic side. 5.4 is more on the HR and the security part.
Okay, we'll bring them together.
Yeah, we understand it. So in this case, it might have some difficulty for IT. I'm not on the IT side, maybe IT people will be able to answer more accurately. The interface between the academic and the other operational may not be that easy or needed to be, incorporated together. Maybe just for the part like Mr. Isla said about the separation of employees, that they need to do more by using the HR system to generate certain type of automated file to update the other computer systems when an employee is separated.
Yeah, I understand that. And my question is, in the work plan that we're planning, where are we doing that?
Yeah,
work plan, where are you testing and looking at in this work plan?
Well, usually what we will do is about when we look at the individual system or the areas, we will also look at the computer system. Like when we perform the purchase orders audit, we look at our PeopleSoft purchase order module. For accounts payable, that's the same thing. It's under the PeopleSoft accounts payable modules.
Okay. I just want to go on record. My point at 5.3 and 5.4 definitely need IT help. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon, I definitely agree that there is an issue as far as taking the two functions with HR and IT and some of the levels as far as staff moving and security.
Sure.
And that is something that I believe when we get final on the background screening report, then we get the answers, get more clarification, then we can adjust in our work plan to make sure we cover that.
Thank you.
And If I could just add, I mean, neither of these reports are reflective of our financial system. So we have a very robust ERP
agree.
system.
I agree.
And that, you know, those, we have very detailed controls in place to ensure that when people are terminated that have specific access to actually do anything to have a financial impact is done so immediately. So just know that these systems are not our financial system, and I know that the IG has done extensive work around the access within our PeopleSoft system, and so I just wanted to make sure to go on record to note that. And it's also included and audited by our external auditors as well as the Florida Auditor General as well.
Randy, anything else?
No, any more questions for me?
Any more questions of Randy and the proposed annual work plan? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the report be approved as presented.
I'll motion to approve the report.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, next we'll move on to item 7.1, contract/procurement activities, quarterly report ending June 30th.
This is a new report that I think we presented last audit as well. This is a combination and an oversight of all of the activities that our contract and quality assurance oversight division performs. We do this, and we're now presenting this in a report so that we can illustrate and let the board and our constituents know that we are looking at all purchases, bids, as they go into the system, and gives a little bit more of an assurity to the public that we are watching the money as we are looking to spend it. I won't go through the details, but each one of the reports, as our contract oversight staff are attending the different advisory committees, if there is anything in those committees or anything in those purchases or bidding process that there's an issue with, we will break that out and either go to an audit, a contract review, or an investigation as needed. Is there any questions on the overall?
Well, I do have one question. Is this where we'll place the ARP within this oversight committee that you were speaking about earlier, or will that remain separate in a separate oversight review process?
That's a separate process. The RFP for the external auditor will be an audit selection committee. We will review it.
The rescue plan, the ARP dollars.
Oh, yes, yes.
It will fall in this.
It will fall in this area as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, any further questions of our Inspector General on that report? Okay, if not, we'll move on to new business, the External Independent Auditing Services. Inspector General Michael?
All right.
Before you start, through the chair, since this involves external audit, we're going to excuse ourselves just so you can.
All right. The next topic that we have is for the external audit, selecting the next external auditor. There's been some changes in Florida law that requires a committee, selection committee, be established to review and propose the RFP qualifications, how the external auditor will be selected. And the new process requires a board member to act as the chair and to have 2 members who will be voting members that are non-district employees, so they have to be volunteers. District staff can act in an advisory role only. They have no input or no vote, but they can't advise on any technical matters. So what we are looking for today is to establish the selection committee, looking for the board to provide 1 person to act as the chairman. Chairman Barbieri? I noticed your hand wasn't exactly jumping up, was it?
Did you notice I was looking the other way, hoping you wouldn't see me sitting here, but.
You can't hide.
Would it be possible for either you or another one of the board members to serve as the chairman?
Certainly, I mean, if that's what's needed, you know, you can put me down initially, and I'll ask the board members if anyone else would prefer to do it. It's fine.
I would recommend that maybe at your IG report, that you bring that up, and ultimately the board should vote on whoever it's going to be. If it's going to be Mr. Barbieri or another board member, that they actually take a vote to appoint that person.
It might be helpful to provide some context as to how much time will be involved to be the chair. I don't know if that would be helpful for you. No, and also for
10 hours, it's like.
No, yeah, so I did participate on one committee for the Solid Waste Authority under these new requirements. And so there's going to be, I think, one meeting, hopefully after the meeting today, to just review the RFP. And then there would be another meeting to actually review the proposals. And then after the review of the proposals, whether there would be oral presentations that would be necessary. So, you know, if all goes well, it really should just be 2 meetings, one being today, and then reading the actual proposals prior to the meeting. So if that's helpful to just understand what the process is.
Thank you.
The RFP, I think the audit committee needs to be formed first, and the audit committee, or the audit selection committee, needs to approve the RFP before the RFP is actually issued. If you don't do that, the Inspector General might come back and tell you you'll have to reissue the RFP.
Yes, exactly. The committee has to approve the initial RFP before it can go out.
Yeah.
And that is.
Audit selection committee, not
Audit
this.
selection committee has to be formed, and they have to approve the RFP prior to being posted. We are looking for volunteers from the audit committee, if anybody would like to.
I'll participate.
Thank you, sir.
I'll also participate.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then I will speak to the board and see if we can get a volunteer for the chairman position, and then we will have the RFP reviewed by that committee.
And then I have a comment on the RFP itself. A couple of months ago, the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, issued a memo. You know, these reports are issued as a comprehensive annual financial report. The thing is, they're changing that because of the acronym is when you say it, it resembles a derogatory word mainly used in South Africa. So they're actually, I think they're changing it to the annual comprehensive financial report. So they're switching it. So the acronym itself should be removed if they're going to use that from the RFP itself.
Right. Yeah, that's an acceptable change. I mean, that's something easy to update.
Okay, so where do we go from here? Does this committee approve the?
I believe right now what we have it presented. Once we get the board designee, then we will be able to come back, and they can then review the RFP and put it out for. So right now we have 2 volunteers. We'll speak to the board to see if we can have the board who they're going to choose to act as the chairman, and then that will have to be revisited. So we'll have to table this one for now.
Okay.
Unless I'm misspeaking, yes.
The audit selection committee needs to approve it first before.
Right.
I mean, is time of the essence? Is this something that really needs to be done today, or can it wait until?
Mr. Talley, I think that what we may be able to do is, once we have confirmation of the board member who's able to serve on the RFP committee, I think we can even then just convene the committee itself for purposes of approving the RFP, so that way it'll be in effect at the time for our next audit committee meeting. So, yeah, I think that what the Inspector General is saying is correct. Is everyone on board?
Yeah, I don't think the our audit committee needs to approve anything. It's the auditor selection committee that has the responsibility of approving.
And once we have that committee, I think, crystallized, at that point in time, we'll be able to get this RFP out and, yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask a question.
Satisfactory with everyone?
Chair. So,
Yes,
somebody asked,
Chairman.
what's the time period? Is this critical because the board meets next Wednesday, but I'll have to get an agenda item on for next Wednesday in order for the board to vote on this. And if you need something done more quickly, there's, you know.
I believe this is for the June 30th, 2022 starting year.
It is.
As urgent as.
That's correct. And there's a timeline in the RFP on, I'm not sure what page it is, but section 4.0. And I think that we can get it taken care of.
Right, and our interim field work normally starts in the spring, late spring. So we should have a little bit of time that we don't need to have it as an emergency item for the next meeting.
Okay, we have a comment over there.
Just
Go
a
ahead.
quick comment from purchasing. We basically put together just a rough outline of the time schedule, and the reason being the current contract expires in March, so we were hoping that the committee could meet, select the committee, and we could get it out in September. Now, in order to make a December board, but should that not be the case, we've still allowed that additional month, so, you know, we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time. Okay, just for the committee to know.
Okay.
It might be helpful if you put together a timeline. I'm sure there's some dates in there that we have to meet, and if we can have a timeline and an idea as to how much time we have to do each of the tasks, you know, with regards to issuing the RFP, when we want to meet to approve it, if we need to do that in advance of issuing it, actually, and then the timeline for acceptance of the proposals, and then reviewing them, and then when is it that we need to actually have the selection made? That would be helpful.
Thank you, Tammy.
With regards to the draft, there is a tentative schedule in there right now, so if the committee would need that broken down any further, you know, please let us know. But we put that schedule in there so that you would have a good idea of when the proposals came in, when questions needed to be responded to, and when the evaluation committee would meet. So we tried to give you a little bit of a roadmap.
Okay, I guess I missed it. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Ms. Frederick, do you have what you need to, from the audit committee now in order to make your meeting today that you're having this afternoon?
Well, no, we won't have it today because we need to have, the chair has to be one of the board members. So once we have a board member identified who's going to be the chair, then we'll be able to schedule that selection committee meeting.
Okay, thank
To
you.
just convene to review the RFP, see if there's any input of any changes on the RFP prior to issuing it.
All right, understood.
I don't believe this committee really does much with this. We're just reviewing it. It's a separate committee is formed that is actually the one that reviews and approves this RFP.
I know it was mentioned about a meeting today. I heard something about a meeting today.
Yeah, there was a possibility of meeting today if we had a board
chair.
member who was willing to chair the committee.
Understood.
With regards to the schedule, I don't see it within the RFP, so if you would please prepare the timeline or direct me to the page for pages, I'd appreciate it.
It's on 4.1 on the RFP.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I would volunteer if it, but I'm not putting it off, but the general counsel says that I have to be authorized by the board to do this, so I can't, although if you want to have a meeting today, I'd be happy to do it if I could, but I can't, so.
No, that's okay. The board votes on what board member is going to be on that
That's correct.
committee.
Right.
Well, then perhaps you can get it on the agenda for your meeting for next week, right?
I can get it on the agenda.
Right, that's what I meant, yeah, okay. Okay. Any further discussion on that? If not, I refer you to item 9. There are 4 different investigative reports that were sent to each of the committee members for your review, so this is just FYI information. And as general comments, again, I want to wish a happy birthday to Terry and Joyce. And Chairman Barbera, I just wanted to ask you if you have any comments you'd like to make in general about, you've got a tough job, and I just wanted to give you the floor for a few minutes if you had some comments to make about the school district in general.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. Obviously, you know what the board did on Wednesday. I know it's, I was going to have a meeting or talk with Dr. Campbell after the meeting. The board realizes they put the administration in a situation that's, that's difficult to handle, but the fact is that all of last year, we had 3,800 infected individuals on our campus. They weren't infected, for the most part, they weren't infected on our campus, but they were on our campuses infected. 3,800, including employees and students. In the first 6 days of this school year, we have 940. We are already at 25% of all the infection we had last year. The board felt like we have to take every mitigation strategy possible. We already have almost 4,000, between employees and students, we have 4,000 employees and students that are on the at-home, stay-at-home order. That stay-at-home order is developed by the Surgeon General that told the board, these are the parameters when you send somebody home. So following what the Surgeon General of Florida said, which is what the governor wanted the Surgeon General to tell us, we have sent 4,000 people home. There's a controversy, obviously, in this country whether masks work or not. Whether they're 100% efficient, we know they're not in keeping the virus out. But if they are a mitigation strategy that we can put in place, along with as much social distancing as we can do, having the children go outside for lunch if possible, keeping them as far apart as possible when they're in the hallways, and it's just one more item. If we have 4,000 people at home, next week we could have 8,000, then we could have 12,000, we could have 20. At what point can we run the system when we have no teachers, no principals, no assistant principals? We already have teachers and principals that are out. So, the board had to make a difficult decision. We have 95% compliance under the old policy with an opt-out. 95% of the students were complying. The other 5%, hopefully with this new mandate, a lot of those 5%, the 11,000 students that opted out, we're hoping that a lot of those parents will say, okay, I'll put a mask on my child for the safety of other children that are, that we're concerned about the spread. So there's going to be some pushback on Monday. We realize that. There's a lot of parents, as you saw at the board meetings. But I can tell you, of the emails that we're getting in over the weekend, probably 90% of those are thanking the board for making their children safe. It's extremely important for the board, especially in the elementary schools where the children cannot be vaccinated. We had 2, and I won't mention the school, but we had 2 last week at one of the elementary schools. 2 students and a teacher all tested positive for COVID. And when the teacher was asked, were the children at least 6 feet away from each other, to avoid having to send them home? The response was, this is a kindergarten class. Those children, I can't tell you that any of them were not hugging each other and playing with each other. So we ended up sending the entire kindergarten class home under the Surgeon General's guidelines for when the stay-at-home order is issued. So the board made a difficult decision, but we felt it's in the best interest of the children. It obviously doesn't, the governor's, it's not, his statement was he's disappointed with Palm Beach County, but he also has Miami-Dade, Broward, Hillsborough, that have also got the same the same opt-out for medical conditions to keep them home. We understand Orange County is probably considering doing the same thing, and Duval County next. So, the infection rate is getting to be unmanageable in this county. The county commissioners issued an emergency order. They can't impose masks because the governor won't allow them to do that, but I talked to the county commissioner. The concern is the hospitals are filling up. I understand last week in Broward County, I was told that of all the hospitals in Broward County, they only had 3 ICU beds available for children. So we have to take into consideration every mitigation strategy possible, and masks are one of those. So the board did what we felt was in the best interest of the community and especially the children and teachers in our school classrooms. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
And also, I want to commend you and the board for appointing Michael Burke as the new superintendent. I think that was a very wise choice. That's just a personal opinion.
I do too. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further business to come before the board? If not, our next regularly scheduled meeting is Friday, September 17th. And if there's no further business, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
A second.
Meeting adjourned, and everyone stay well. And Tammy, I hope you recuperate fast.
Thank you very much. I plan to see you next month. Take care.